everyone to another session of our Global Employability Expert Series. My name is Mirta. I'm the head of employability and coaching at Virtual Internships, and I'm very excited to be with you today to go through this really interesting topic, which is my computer. I think it's excellent. So our really interesting topic for today is navigating your path to the United Nations, insights from a former insider. And for that, we have our speaker, Matias Acosta. And who is he? He will let us know more about this, but just for you to have an idea, Matias has led more than 100 people teams, managed more than 1 million I understand these are projects. He managed projects more than worth more than 1 million and published more than 50 articles about sustainability and different topics and different reports. He will tell us more about this. He was the head of exploration of the United Nations Development Programs Accelerator Lab, and an academic at the University of Cambridge and Technical University Darmstadt, that's in Germany. He is the co-founder of Co-Science and Shaping Horizons. He will tell us what this is, what he does, and he studied materials engineering in Argentina, and he has a PhD at the Technical University of Darmstadt in Germany. And what are we going to discuss in our session today? So in our session, Matias will tell us a little bit about what it takes to succeed in international organizations like the United Nations. He will also tell us a little bit about the essential skills and qualities you need to work at the UN. He will also share many more interesting information, so you have a deeper understanding of the challenges and rewards of working in a diverse and impactful environment. And then we'll have a relaxed conversation. The idea is that you get to ask many questions, so please use the chat, use the Q&A function, so we can really take advantage of this great speaker. So thank you very much and welcome, Matias.
Thank you, Mirta, for the introduction. I guess you can all hear me well, right? So, So Mirta, since you are sharing the screen, so if you would like to go to the next slide, let me tell you a little bit more how I ended up where I ended up, and let's connect that with the United Nations. So my name is Matias. I'm originally from Argentina. You may hear that from my accent. I grew up there. I studied in a national university with a scholarship, materials engineering. Then I moved to Germany, again with a scholarship. I pursued there, well, first my master thesis, a 6-month professional work to, let's say, conclude the degree of materials engineering. I finished that, and then I got appointed, let's say, or a sort of scholarship, so to do a PhD. The topic of my PhD was clean materials for Internet of Things, particularly sensors and actuators. I spent in Germany around doing my PhD around 3.5 years. I then worked as a scientist, 1.5 years more there. After that, I wanted to try to see what I wanted to do from my life, and ideally try to reconnect a little bit with Argentina, because I always wanted to go back to my country. And then I took around 8 months time off, where I was backpacking actually around the world, thinking what I wanted to do. But also actually, meanwhile, I was writing scientific papers that I still have from my PhD. I have some fun story I could tell you after if you want to know those trips and how it connects with professional career. I was probably a nomad at the time, 5 years before that word was sort of existing as we will know it now, right now, a digital nomad. I was also writing some funding grants. This is how research is done. So I was writing some funding grants to do research somewhere else to continue the career, but already with a focus of how that would reach my path, let's say, to go back to Argentina. That's how I got actually free fellowships, let's say free grants to do research at Cambridge, 3 different ones. And what happened is, like, I moved to Cambridge. There was a point there, something that changed a little bit in my life, which was I was volunteering at Global Shapers, and that opened a little bit my mindset towards not necessarily just doing science, but open to new sort of impact-driven projects and a potential career. And what happened was, like, thanks to Global Shapers, I heard about this opportunity in the UN while I was still working as an academic there, and I also started some projects there.
I'm curious about what is Global Shapers?
Yes, so Global Shapers is a global, as the name says, volunteering community from the World Economic Forum. There's like local hubs around the world. Probably I can almost bet that there's a hub in almost all the cities where people are hearing us today. And it's these hubs have 20 to 50 people under the age of 30 years old. And they are like self-managed, let's say, local communities that what they do is projects for impact. So it's a way of learn by doing, let's say, but with young people, like-minded sort of type of experience, let's say. So something complementary probably to the virtual internships you are doing in a non-professional setting. Obviously, this is a young people experience. It's a way of meeting other people as well, you know. And what happened there is, so I started a project, the project growth. It became Shaping Horizons, which is one of the 2, let's say, social enterprises I created. So that's an educational platform for young people where we teach them how to build a venture with impact, focusing in Latin America. And simultaneously, I got appointed in Argentina as the head of exploration at the UN Accelerator Lab. This is part of the UNDP agency. I will explain a little bit how the UN is divided after. I decided that for some reasons, this UN job was not for me. I'll tell you that a little bit later why. And I decided I wanted to bring a little bit more impact into the climate space and also use my let's say scientific and technical knowledge, and that's how I started Cosystems, which is a clean tech or climate tech venture that I'm building with a friend from Cambridge. And what we do with Cosystems, as the name says, is cozy means comfort, sense means censoring. So we use sensors to optimize air conditioners to make people comfortable, and that means actually we also reduce their consumption, the electricity consumption, and the greenhouse emissions. So if I think that's a little bit who I am and my professional path. As a summary, you can understand me as a technical person who cares about social and environmental impact and has expertise beyond, let's say, the technical niche area I have worked. I have expertise in areas, ethics, and climate. So that would be the summary, and we can move, I guess, to the next slide. By the way,
I liked how you put it, right? Because you have technical background, because that's what you studied, but you care about different topics, among which social topics, right? At the beginning, one could say, okay, but if you're into technical stuff, maybe that's like social, the social world is not part of that, but we need to, by now we know that careers are very, each person can create their own career. So you studied a technical field, but then also your interest goes beyond that, social entrepreneurship, social impact, and with all this you have created a super interesting career. And now we're interested in learning more about how what was your United Nations let's say chapter of your life?
So probably contrary to many of the people that are hearing us today, I was not necessarily trying to achieve a career in the United Nations. I knew United Nations, but I didn't knew the technicalities about it. So it was a lucky coincidence, probably. I ended up working there. And I have to say, if you were to work in the UN, it's definitely not the most conventional career path to be an engineer or a technical person to work there. Now, what happened was the following. United Nations, it's a massive organization. From a conceptual point of view, it was born to keep and maintain peace in the world after the Second World War, and it has evolved since then. But at the end of the day, I think what you need to understand is that it is divided in several different agencies and special units that would care about different particular topics. Now, one of the biggest ones is the United Nations Development Program, which focuses a lot in peace and basically equality. Now, of course, since you're aware of all the innovation, all the new things that are happening with technology, the UN is also, let's say, working towards becoming a more innovative and more agile organization. So among the different efforts that this very big organization is doing, one of which probably the largest one, at least when I entered in the history of the UN, was the accelerator labs, which are part of the UNDP or United Nations Development Program. Now, what was the goal of these labs? The goal of these labs was to accelerate development, particularly along an agenda that you may have heard of, which is the Sustainable Development Goals. If you didn't hear about that, that's pretty much the whole world, like pretty much all the countries got together for several years, and they created 17 goals that they sort of all agree with a certain dimensions that we wanted to achieve by 2030, okay? And pretty much these accelerator labs, the goal that they have is to create knowledge and to accelerate the development in different countries, as such that we meet those goals. That's the whole point of this. This was a massive project at the time when it started. It started in over 100 countries simultaneously, Argentina being one of them. By now it expanded further. And each lab had different heads on different particular areas. So I was focusing basically, and that's why they wanted us somehow perhaps with a different background, someone that could understand a little bit technicalities, but also would have a future looker perspective and care about impact, because the exploration part was all about prospective analysis, horizon scanning, which is at the end of the day trying to analyze what actually can contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals, not necessarily just technology, but beyond, and how that basically is flourishing in different countries. That would be the solutions mapping, try to identify what's going on in a country about that particular area. And then there was a third section, experimentation, which the goal is to see, okay, is this actually accelerating the agenda? Is it working? And if it is actually working, can we actually make it go faster so that we actually meet these Sustainable Development Goals before 2030? So a little bit, as in a nutshell, that's the Accelerator Lab, and my role was the exploration one. And I think a little bit that was my journey, let's say, arriving to the UN. I just heard through Global Shapers, through this community, about the opportunity. I just applied. It's extremely competitive to go into the UN. And I believe, Mirta, the next one, it's about providing some inputs of how they can potentially get there, right?
Yes, someone raised their hand. Ahab, I believe. Do you want to ask a question? I don't know, or maybe you want to use the chat. Remember, you can use the chat. Okay. Yes, so Ada, I see you raising your hand. You're allowed to speak if you want to share anything, huh? Is that the case? I'm not sure. Okay, well, yes, so we would love to know what is it that it takes, right? Okay, we said Then you're gonna share probably, I believe there are some pages where we can find some entry-level opportunities at the UN. But
yeah,
let's say, in your experience, what is it that someone who wants to work for the UN needs to have? Those skills, what have you realized there? Like, is there anything in common that you can say, okay, most people that work at the UN have these skills, are these kind of people? This is like, what is, in your experience, the skills and qualities of someone who wants to work at the UN?
So let me start first by saying what it means to work at the UN.
Yes.
Because as I was saying, there's actually over probably 200 specialized agencies or units in the UN. And working at the UN doesn't necessarily mean just to be a staff in the UN. There's a lot of consultants. There's a lot of formal volunteers with actually contractual agreements with the UN. And obviously a lot of internships and a lot of opportunities. We are talking about an organization that actually covers all the world with hundreds of thousands of people working for it. So I think it's important to make a little bit of a distinction about that. Why am I saying this? When you start, or let's say if your career goal is to work in the UN, for someone, let's say in their 19, 20 years old, like someone that the person who was talking before, there definitely one thing you could consider is checking in your university which type of programs there are there that might be already affiliated with the UN, because the UN has not only has actually universities where you can actually perhaps do an exchange program as a student, but also there might be specialized internships or other type of programs that will directly give you an experience inside some sort of UN agency. Also, it's important to note that the UN has global, regional, and national offices. So it's a whole different story. And in fact, a whole different type of criteria for entering into these different levels, no matter if you enter as a volunteer, as a staff, or as a consultant. Because on a national level, there might be, for example, restrictions that in Argentina, only Argentines can work. As a staff, for example, for some positions, you have to be a foreigner, actually, to be working in Argentina. So how to navigate these complexities, I'll tell you, you just need to be in the system to understanding a little bit. But like a first start, for example, if you're at the university still, is checking these programs with the university. Career-wise, you could be in a very specialized topic, or you can study something that is aligned with the UN, meaning, for example, international relations. If you study, for example, education, then UNICEF would be quite relevant. So depending on the type of organization that you focus on, there's a lot of, for example, finance agencies, so therefore their economics would make sense. So depending on which one you may focus on, you may try to actually have a degree that aligns well with that. Though I was an engineer with a PhD in a very narrow topic and I worked in it, right? So there is room for changing that. Now, the reality is, let's assume for some reason, you finish your degree and you don't necessarily target the UN early enough. Well, there's still opportunity. So there's definitely two avenues that you can get at a very early stage still into the UN system. One is there's an agency called United Nations Volunteering. That agency collaborates with the rest of the agencies to actually provide, in most cases, they are paid volunteering positions. They are paid because the concept of volunteering inside the UN means that you care more about what you are doing than the payment itself, but you do receive a payment. In fact, if you're an expert volunteer, that would be someone, for example, like me, I could get a salary where probably I could live from that. So just the word volunteering, please, it should not confuse you. It might be that you are working pro bono as well. It does depend a lot in the opportunity, But it is definitely a way to get to know the organization, get to know some people, and understand what's going on a little bit more from being an insider or becoming an insider. The other opportunity you have beyond United Nations volunteering, it's also doing internships. And you don't necessarily need to be a student for that. You may be, or you may have finished early your career, your degree a little bit, like some months before or something, and you may still have the opportunity actually to enter as an intern. You may be able to enter into a junior position as a consultant as well, although most of the times that would require that you are already quite specialized in a topic, because when the UN looks for a consultant, that means they need a particular expertise that you don't have in-house, okay? Now, if you want to become a staff, it's probably 80 to 90% the likelihood that you have done something of these steps before, any of those that we just talked about. Like someone like me just flying from outside the UN into the UN, it's very strange. In a senior, let's say, staff position, because often there's few staff positions. To give you a perspective, we are talking around 50 to 60 staff, for example, in Argentina, and over 10,000 consultant volunteers, etc. So that's the ratio, right? So it's hard to get there now. And what I can tell you, if your aim in the future is to become a staff at the UN, is that you will need a PhD, and your likelihood of entering the UN is that not just a PhD, but you may want to have a PhD in an Ivy League or like a top 50 university in the world. And this is just because not only it matters in paperwork, let's say a UN staff position, for a UN staff position, that you have a good degree, but it's also about the network and the networking. A lot of times, yeah, you want to say something? Or I
yes,
can just finish the thought.
No, yes, because
can...
yes, finish.
And I think this networking part matters a lot for all the other opportunities or career path I said before in the UN, because at the end of the day, although it's quite standardized, the procedures of how, let's say, when I was a staff, I could hire someone, etc. But obviously, there are further opportunities to do some direct contracting or few particular things that let's say the official code of the UN allows to do, to hire some people. And if you know that someone is working very good and it's excellent, that's probably a candidate for the UN. Bear in mind, it's highly competitive. And to give you a perspective, I recall approximately the numbers for my position when I applied was like around 1,000 people apply, and I got it, right? So I would even claim that me getting that position has a strong component of luck. Like a clone of me with everything I have done perhaps never gets that position, because at the end of the day, I would always say that if you take 1,000 people, there's probably at least 100 people that are extremely good and 10 people that are equally excellent. From those 10 people, it's just random who gets the position. That's my perspective. I could be wrong, but obviously, I think it does matter a lot if you can have some added value by having a network in the organization or having a network in the development area. In this case, for example, again, it was not my case. But I mean, seeing the future and seeing how a lot of these big organizations work, it's something that I strongly stress, and I would like to suggest that you try to build that network. And also it's important for you because you will realize whether that's the type of people you feel comfortable with, which matters a lot. This is the people you will spend most of the time during your life, even if you're working very long time in the UN, right? So it does matter that you get along well with these people. It does matter that you feel comfortable working with these people. And if there's something that I notice is like working in an academic lab, working in the UN, or working in a startup is three entirely different worlds with entirely different people and entirely different mindsets. And sorry, Mirta, I didn't allow you to open the mic.
No, it's amazing.
Happy
This
to.
is we're getting into the juicy part, because something that I wanted to mention was, like you said, okay, at the UN we have different paths, right? One is to become staff, which that means what does it really mean to be staff at the UN, Matias?
Well, to become a staff in the UN means you have a permanent or 10-year contract that anyway is typically renewed every 1 year or every 2 years, but it means like you have a long-term contractual agreement with that organization, typically. And that means you get things like social insurance,
Work
international
rights.
work rights, etc., with a very important caveat, let's say, or difference. This is a supranational international organization, which means actually you won't be paying necessarily the same type of tax as a regular citizen. You may have diplomatic immunity. You may not receive the same rights as a worker in that country. You are under a different international law, and that's very important because for some things it's great, for some others perhaps not. It will depend heavily on your country, and this is something also to consider. But I guess that's something if you want to establish a long-term career there. By the way, all the salaries, everything is public information. You can Google that. It's a public organization, right? It's a supranational public organization, so you can find all these things online.
Excellent. And if you are not a staff, then you may be perhaps a contractor. You can have a different kind of a setting, right? Or work for these local agencies that you mentioned, right?
Exactly. So if you are a consultant or a contractor, same word, different. I mean, different word, but same thing. You basically, it means you have certain responsibilities that are determined by a contract, but you are most likely eligible to do whatever other types of jobs simultaneously that you may want to do. That gives a lot more flexibility. It's definitely an entry path to become a staff. But if you become staff, you also have some restrictions. You're not allowed to do a lot of things because you are supposed to be politically independent, and you are supposed to, well, respect a certain code that has been developed throughout the last, by now, more than 70 years, that it assures basically transparency, independence on your decision making, and few other things. Bear in mind that as a UN staff, depending on the position you may have, you may be working directly, talking and implementing projects with someone as a minister of a country, right? So you do need that independence to be working, because also 2 years after, you may be working with another minister. So it's very important that politically the UN remains independent from local governments. It's in the whole interest of development, in fact.
And I imagine also, like you said, okay, if you want to become a staff, permanent contract, then PhD is definitely necessary, because you are competing with other people and you need like high levels of knowledge, right, and expertise. For contractors and other kind of options, I understand also that, well, if you have a PhD, the better, but not necessarily, because you're going to be working on specific projects. How do you see it?
You may or not have a PhD. I think what you need there, it's probably a competitive advantage in the particular niche area where the call is. There might be a call to, let's invent something. I have a water bottle. To develop sustainably this water bottle with only local resources in La Pampa, Argentina. Super specific, right? But for some reason, there might be that project. And that means if you happen to be that person that had somehow that knowledge in that industry locally, you may actually be acting as a consultant in that area. But perhaps you have a lot of years of working experience, but you don't even have a master's degree, or not even perhaps a bachelor's, but you work 20 years in that industry particularly. So it really, really matters a lot, I would say, when you are a consultant. Although obviously degrees matter, and bear in mind that even a consultant position is also highly competitive as well.
Yes,
and there you will also need,
yeah, please.
No, that there also what is important probably to notice you will be acting as sort of freelancer, in the sense that you will need to submit an economic proposal and a technical proposal, what you plan to do within the technicalities of the open call, let's say. And therefore, obviously, it matters a lot how you budget that, because in fact, I can tell you, and this is public information, the UN cannot hire whoever applies. It has to basically go under certain rules that they are public. In fact, when you see the openings, there are certain rules one must fulfill. And definitely some, since we talked before about also transversal or longitudinal, or let's say soft skills, whatever you want to name them, they are also quite important, because it's not just about the technicalities, but definitely English will always be a requirement, depending on the position. Not just English, but also French might be a requirement for the UN. And yeah, so these things obviously matter as well.
Yes, and that's what I wanted to get, right? Because we know that the UN is huge. There are different agencies, different projects. So we may have a background aligned with one of these agencies or projects. And we said, okay, I studied like you did, even perhaps super specific, but there's like probably a UN project for each bachelor, right? In different topics. But once you're there, right? And when you get to see how people work, like as you were mentioning, what are these soft skills or ways of working that you identified and you said, okay, in order to be working at this organization, there's these mindset skills that you should definitely have. What is that?
Well,
especially, sorry, saying like you said, working at a startup is the whole world, right? Working at university is the whole world. Working at the UN, what is that world like, and what does it require?
You definitely need good cross-cultural skills, because it's very likely that you will be working with people from many different nationalities. This again depends a lot in the role, but
intercultural skills, yes.
Yeah, cross-cultural, intercultural, yeah, exactly. Yes. As I was saying, well, very good communication skills, because again, I mean, it's not just about talking English, it's about understanding different gestures, different ways of being of people, and how they communicate. I would also claim, and this is something I don't necessarily have, depending, if you are a consultant, well, the technical expertise. Now, if you are a staff, you need patience. And this is something you won't read probably anywhere. And why is that the case? Because bear in mind, depending on the project, we are talking about a lot of money that is being moved, let's say, to deploy or implement something. And because of that, there's a very hard level of, well, we can say bureaucracy, but also scrutiny, like meaning like every single step had to be double checked, because like imagine these are public funds, and therefore there has to be an assurance of transparency of how every single aspect of the project is done. And when you are talking about the projects, like this means it requires patience. And this is also one of the things that probably it's rewarding at the same time, because like if you go through all the steps, it means the project might be very, very large, versus being in a startup is like, if you have patience, you're not in a startup, like because absolutely, like you need to do things like fast, move, no matter what, iterate, change basically the path, so that you can keep on advancing. So patience is not a thing, but it will take a lot of time, and 99% of the startups would never build the large degree of scale of a project in the UN. So it's a different thing. It's much more, let's say, bottom up, a startup, much more flexible in a lot of things. The UN role would be much more like a structure in a lot of things. It will likely take much wider implications, whatever you're doing, at least during the initial stages. And yeah, and I think probably this is like a brief of a summary of the skills. I think they are relevant. There are other skills like critical mindset, etc. But I think probably these ones are important. The ones I
Yeah,
mentioned.
and I think that what you mentioned is super important, because sometimes when we're starting our professional path, we may have an idea of a place we would like to work because of of its impact, right? Like the UN, for instance. I studied international relations, so I definitely 100% identify with this. I wanted to work at the UN. I wanted to do all these great things, right? And then I did have my experience not at the UN, but at the European Commission. Same kind of structure in this supranational. And I discovered that the way, the ethos, the cultural fit with these kind of organizations is not really for me. Because just like you described, I was doing all these projects that required so many steps, everything so slow. And at a certain moment, I felt frustrated, right? Because I was like, this is... And when I started working for VI, a startup, I discovered a whole new different kind. These are, for me, like the kind of extremes, right? A startup and supranational organization. In between, many different options. A startup is like what you said, super fast. Now it's like building the railroad as the train goes by, right? Like we're like, and this is very important, because sometimes we may idealize some kind of work and we don't consider the cultural fit. How do we go along with this, right? And you said something really essential, which is get to know other people who do that to understand if that's something you like, right? You mentioned networking. What are your guidelines, your tips, your ideas on networking? How can we start creating this networking agility since we're at university?
Well, one of the things I would recommend, actually, I heard that, I remember when I was attending one of the welcome sort of tutorials at Cambridge, that an alumni said it, which I like, is create luck by being busy.
Great luck.
That doesn't mean being busy. So that doesn't mean, by the way, to compromise your mental health or your any type of health at all. But when you are young, go out there and check what is happening and put yourself in scenarios that make you busy. And by being busy, you are getting to know people, you are getting to know experiences. You don't really perhaps understand at that point you want to have an impact, but you don't understand how that impact could be created perhaps yet. So being with people that are somehow making a change, creating impact, could be important, because if you are in the UN, you will be more of an enabler, versus if you are in a startup, you will be more of a doer. So you will see things happening, but not necessarily in the UN, because someone else is doing something because you generated that something. So it's very different experience in one and another, and both, let's say, type of jobs may have their like the opportunities to have an impact, etc., but it will look extremely different how your day-to-day life will be. So about the networking, therefore, create life by being busy, try to attend different events, meetup, Eventbrite. I mean, there's every day, everywhere, something happening. And if it doesn't, start something. I know people that started local chapters, for example, of TED, like TEDx, they're called, or like start doing some events in Eventbrite about the topic you care about. All these things, by the way, demonstrate something that it's valuable, no matter if you're in the academia, in the UN, or in a startup. Everyone wants to work with people that basically have initiative. That's something that no matter where you are, everyone wants to work with these people. Having initiative, it's critical, and it's something you can be trained, or you can train yourself at, and it will help you to do networking, etc. And then try to create an atmosphere or an environment surrounding you that resonates to whatever you want to know or whatever you want to do. Do you want to be a professional soccer player and play at the level of Messi? Well, right now, go if you can, and check whether you can start playing at the initial stages of the Miami team that now Messi is playing. Like, try to engage yourself with the organizations, or where these people that would become your champions or your mentors eventually, and you can learn, and you can also again understand whether that's the correct path or not for you. That's very, very important when you're young.
Yes. So, do you have some kind of insights on challenges and rewards that entail working at organizations, super big organizations like these ones?
Well, rewards, what I can mention is definitely you will be in a very respectful position, that people will realize that you probably made a lot of effort to get there. And obviously that's a personal reward, I think, which is important, because like, like we always think we just need to push, effort, but sometimes it's good to be acknowledged by that. And I think if you enter into the UN, you will be acknowledged by that. Another reward, at least in my case, if I compare to my previous, let's say, experiences, I was very well treated, very respected inside the organization as well, in terms of whatever thing you may imagine related with human resources, related with well-being, related with professional development, etc. I can still say, like, it's the best organization I know in this regard. It's not that I know a million organizations, but I can say it's very, very, very good. And obviously, depending how you feel, I mean, I work only, as of now, I have the luck that I can just work, let's say, on things that I feel are worthy per se, because I feel they have a meaning what I'm doing. I don't work for money anymore. And there in the UN, it's extremely likely that you will feel like that, which I think is extremely important. Now, in terms of the challenges, for someone like me, a sort of a doer, entrepreneur type of personality, as I was saying, the patience, you will need to go through all this paperwork, no matter what. There's a good reason for that paperwork to be in there. I do think overall that brings challenges of efficiency, and I'm running right now a startup that is about efficiency, so I do care about that as well a lot, and I care in efficiency and minimalism type of thing in my life. So obviously for me that was a challenge, that there's always extra things because of this whole structure that one needs to consider. I would say for me, probably that's a good summary of reward versus challenges. Some other people may consider hard to work internationally or these type of things, but for me it was very, very natural.
Yes, and I was thinking about what you mentioned, right? This idea of how we ourselves can explore different career paths and different ways of working, because you working at the UN had the opportunity of creating this impact through a very established organization with all these other people that required a way of working, some kind of qualities and skills, but then working as an entrepreneur that require a different set of skills for you. And so in your career, you're still very young, you have tried different things, right? Like working at the UN, being an entrepreneur, teaching. And we can have all of that, right? We can create these different hats for our careers. We don't necessarily need to get married, like using the expression. We can have different things in our career. So in your perspective, someone who has done so many different things and has been very, you have expanded yourself a lot, how did you make to create this career that is successful for you, right? That you said, this is something that I like. What took you in your mindsets, in your path, being flexible? You mentioned the idea of volunteering that really helped you there, connect with other people. What was it?
Yeah, so I definitely put a lot of effort throughout my career. I don't think effort is all. I was probably at the right places as well, but like, for example, and I was very resilient as well, I think. For example, I recall, I can tell a story to justify a little bit this project. When I was finishing my materials engineering degree, there was a policy change in my institute that we could, when I entered there, we were meant to be doing our like 6 month professional work abroad, and it's something I wanted to do because I have never been abroad at the time before. And then when I was at the last year, there was a change of policy, and supposedly we were not allowed to go abroad. And this was a massive fight between the students and the body, the council body at the time. And I remember like this was somehow I had to solve because I was the representative student for the students. And it was a lot of goings and comings. So there was a lot of obstacles that one needs to go. Now I went through that, and I managed that was secure, that we could do an experience abroad if we wanted. But the situation was like, then you need to find that. And our scholarships were very low for going abroad. So it was a very challenging scenario. So I sent over 350 emails, I remember, and I was checking one the different professors where I could do this experience abroad. And okay, among the 350, I was lucky that the one in Germany was very, very good, and but I did do a pre-selection, right? So it was effort, it was resilience, because I got millions of no's or even not an answer even. But at the same time, somehow being strategic about it and where to go. And then well, once you are somewhere, if you have in mind perhaps potential ways or futures where you would like to go towards, you can try to analyze a little bit, okay, what other people did, what can I do about it? So that's being strategic, and definitely be resilient in the sense like, at the beginning, always there will be a lot of no's, right? And then you need to keep on pushing forward and moving forward towards something that you want to achieve. That requires resilience and effort, definitely. Yeah, is that answering somehow the question, you think?
Yes, I like it. Effort and resilience.
And the volunteering, sorry, and one thing, the volunteering part, I think, is also, for me, it did change my life, I can say. And being open to opportunities that may arise from that, it's quite important. It did change my life because at the time I didn't have experience, or not much experience beyond, let's say, the lab, and I met a whole world that I really liked. And being in a volunteering position, depending on the type of organization you are dealing with, but it can be very entrepreneurial, and it can help you develop this resilience, this like initiating skills, and this like being a doer type of person and solving problems, which I think it's quite important. And at the same time, you might be meeting friends, your partner, whatever.
Absolutely, absolutely. So effort, resilience, being open to opportunities, connecting with other people, and then discovering, right, what you like. And I think that's what you've done throughout your career. And yeah, I think that's super interesting. And that's a really key idea, right? Like career development is about exploration, exploring what we like, what we're good at, developing the skills, and definitely meeting the people who are going to bring us new ideas, new opportunities, new pathways that we didn't even think about, right? So these are really key things to start practicing now that you are doing an internship, that you're finishing your university, that you're really taking the first steps towards creating the career you like. So we're sharing a survey. Please complete it so you can share your feedback with us. Thanks for doing that. And let's share Matias' contact. So talking about networking, you can stay in touch with Matias. And Matias, do you perhaps have some webpage where we can find some of the opportunities you mentioned? I don't know if you have a web UN internship web page or...
Yeah, so actually there is for literally, if you Google UN internships or UNV, short be like UN volunteers, you will see there's literally international opportunities there. I would suggest you do consider and read a little bit the positions that you may like, because again, some may be virtual actually, which is good, but like some may require you to be in person in a particular country and have a particular nationality. So bear in mind, again, you will need to narrow a little bit or funnel yourself the opportunities. But let me, I can probably check UMB, and I'll share the link now in the chat.
Excellent. Do you have any last question before our speaker leaves? Well, I want to thank you. This was very interesting and informational. I really suggest everyone to add Matias to your LinkedIn profile. You never know. That's how we start the networking these days, working remotely. And definitely, Matias, I want to thank you a lot for being here. For our audience, remember that you have 2 coaching calls in your program. If you haven't had any, probably you will receive an email soon letting you know. Take advantage of these coaching calls because it's a great inclusion and it will help you have some clarity on your next professional steps. And remember, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and watch our previous webinars. So Matias, thank you very much for being here today. This has been a super pleasure, and we have all the participants thanking you for being here today.
Of course, thank you for the invitation. Bye.
So wish you everyone an excellent day and see you next time. Bye.